equipment or, like ultraviolet light screens or ozonators in the rooms or anything. What do they expect? Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. Of course, the start of prepping is to prep yourself. Get yourself in physical shape, take the right nutraceuticals, detox, drink clean filtered water. And John, you mentioned a real interesting point. This is a prepper point, which I thought, that's really smart. And of course, I'm ambidextrous, which is why I always got swiped with an 18-inch brass ruler by my nun teacher, because I was raised in a private Catholic school in the grade 6.
Right.
And it would whap me on the knuckles because I would write with either hand. And, of course, they thought it was a work of the devil when you could do that.
That sounds like a Catholic thing, yeah.
And so what I would do, too, is just to be a smart aleck, I actually would learn how to write upside down and backwards, so you only can tell what I was writing if you use two mirrors. So I could reverse it in my head, so then I'd write upside down and backwards in script or whatever. And I'd say, what are you writing? And, of course, they didn't know unless they used two little mirrors to figure it out or if they could flip it in their head. So what I tell people to do is, you mentioned about learning to shoot your gun, because you're a gun trainer. If you go to libertyman.com, you're in, I think, North Carolina. Is that right? Missouri. You're in Missouri. And what happens is that you train people at your, if they go to your website, you have training seminars. You go to a number of these special sessions where you train people how to use a gun, but you want them to train to use the right eye and right hand, their left hand and the left eye, just in case they lose an eye, or their eye is red or sore or get hit with something or just got scratched. And that's a really good prep thing. And I think people should think with both sides of their brain, too, not just one side or even just one good neuron, which, just using a little joke here. You got to know what they're actually doing. For example, the southern border, before we go to our prepper stuff at the bottom of the hour and we talk about the eye training thing, what's your take on what's going on with the southern border and what's driving it? Because I found some really interesting stuff. You did, too, over the weekend. What's driving this?
Well, Doctor, first of all, the government ran advertisements to hire people to escort these sub-teen children 6 months ago. So they knew it was coming. They ran the advertisements to hire people well in advance of when the crisis was here, so they'd have the employees trained up and ready to go to escort these youngsters from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, and so forth, when they got here without parents, without money, and carrying all kinds of infectious, contagious, deadly diseases. Now they're here. And it's a plan, it's a contrived plan to create a crisis. And they, in fact, are creating a crisis with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, the strains of measles never seen before in this country, and consequently no resistance of people to the measles, scabies, various parasites, head lice, body lice. It's a long, long list of things that typically aren't seen very much in American medical community, if at all.
Right.
So the crisis is being created. The healthcare workers are getting sick. The Border Patrol people are getting sick. They're bringing in Coast Guard medics to do the medical screening, which is well above and beyond any training these men and women have had, as good as they are for treating trauma on the spot, cuts and bruises and broken bones. Their training is not to detect infectious diseases. That's just not who they are, these Coast Guard medics. And no blood, and even if they did have a training, there's no blood tests, no blood's being drawn, which is what you need anyway to determine many of these diseases. So they're coming in with minimal screening, being housed in areas where the infectious people are kept from the uninfected by a yellow tape on the floor, which obviously won't work. Right. And then they're being distributed. They're being put on buses and sent to cities all over the United States without proper screening.
And by the way, they're sent to foster homes. A lot of these kids also were extremely stressed. Some of them are suicidal. Some have been separated from their mother. What I've heard is this really disturbing story, and we need to corroborate it further, but the story I've heard is that the CIA was directly involved in recruiting some of their killer groups to actually start killing males in native Indian groups, especially in a place of Guatemala. And if this is something that's a systematic process, what they're doing is they've got basically these terrified mothers with their children heading north, being told that they won't be turned off the border and they're going to be okay. And they're terrified because they're killing the men. And what I see happening, and this when you say, where's this going? Why would our CIA do this? Well, remember, the CIA are the secret agencies run the world for the corporate global billionaires, and I call the Earth Inc. guys. And what they really want to do is they want to convert this whole area to Zone 3 of the World Trade Zones, which was published in the fall of 1992, I believe, in the journal called Foreign Affairs, the journal of the Council on Foreign Relations. I think it was September 1992.
Right.
And what they did basically is they published and said, this is what we want to do. And we want to put these 12 to 10 zones, which are right out of the Bible, and that Zone 3, which is Canada, the United States, and Mexico, will be Zone 3. And you can see it. That's why they put in the Affordable Care Act, because they wanted to make it close enough to the Canadian system. And the Mexican, they have a universal healthcare system that's under their control, where basically every doctor and nurse and healthcare person becomes a Spitsnot federal officer of the unified, now North American Command healthcare system. They don't want your doctor to be an independent professional that just takes care of you, and there's no reason for insurance carriers or the government to know what the hell you saw the doctor for. Or the doctor can integrate natural medicine, functional medicine, detox, and innovative care. No. They want the doctor to follow protocols, even if it kills you, toxic drugs, don't give you vitamins like the Codex Alimentarius in Europe. That's why our international business is shipping to Europe and Australia, New Zealand, wherever the Codex has been involved, is enormous, because they can't get good nutraceuticals to help them avoid diseases in these countries, because Europe is totally under the thumb of the Rothschilds. You know, the money in Europe, the euro, is completely a private currency owned by the Rothschilds that have trillions of dollars, not billions. They're trillionaires. So we've got an evil system here where this is all designed to finally bring America down when they, quote, crash the dollar, which, by the way, Gerald Celente saying it, I believe it. But they're going to crash it and devalue it, just like they did in the Second World War. What they did is they bought the gold at, I think, like it was at $22 and then revalued it at $22.41 and then resold it at $35. They effectively devalue the currency. They're going to do the converse. They'll basically effectively allow the system to kind of crash. The dollar will be devalued probably 60 to 75%. Then they're going to turn the Federal Reserve into a world reserve system and then allow a basket of currencies, includes the yuan and the Russian ruble, so they'll be part of the game. That's what's really going on. Under the scenes of the war in Ukraine and the Middle East is this money stuff that's going on, that's the glue to hold the New World Order together. And it'll eventually fly apart when the parties don't like what they're getting at the table. That's the real story behind the story. And the story behind this story is if the Guatemalan men are being killed in these native areas, what's going on is our CIA is involved because the international bankers have said there's too many people waking up. In fact, there was a British union called Unite that's now decided no longer to do contract deals with the insane state of Israel. Now, I support this fact that the state of Israel needs to exist. I support the fact that Israel should not split land for peace. But I do not support the idea of giving fancy long tanker bombers and these bunker buster nukes to Israel so they can start World War III. I don't believe that they should be operating without the power and the control of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Israel shouldn't squeak sideways unless our Joint Chief says it's okay. But Israel can do whatever the heck it pleases, including get industrial and military secrets to China and Russia, which they've done and gay abandoned for decades, putting the screws to America. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the idea that Christians are being persecuted in Israel. If you're a Messianic Christian, and I measure visiting my friends at Dizengoff Circle in Tel Aviv, and I am disgusted by the state of Israel treating Christians like they're second-class citizens, even if they're Jews, blood Jews from Russia. It makes me mad when I see a neurosurgeon can't get a job sweeping in front of a cafe because he became a Messianic believer because they accepted Yeshua, Jesus, as their Messiah. And when I hear Christians that just want to rubber stamp it, I don't want to see land for peace and have them split the land. That's against God's ruling.
You know, the Messianic Jews wouldn't have any problem under Saddam Hussein, not at all.
Right, and I have a big problem with them being hyper-racist, too. This idea of being hyper-racist, that's not the problem. I also want to defang all the so-called local Muslim maniacs, too, from all their weapons, and we could do that effectively just like these drug gangs in Central and South America that are killing all these men, by the way, at the behest of the CIA, which is integrated with the Israeli and the Saudi Arabians when they did 9/11. So, you know, let's just tell the truth here. 9/11 was an inside job. Putin released the information. This thing that's going on with our surge is an inside job. It's to destroy America.
Do you feel the...
So, John, after that little rant here, tell me what your take is on it, because I see us being shepherded toward the mark of the beast. I take God at his word. I'm a messianic believer, and I will stake the last drop of oxygen, the last drop of blood on the words of the Most High God and the blood of Jesus that took away my sins. And by the way, you know how you can tell that your sins are gone? You start giving over to Jesus all the things you did to other people that were bad, all the things that people did to you that you didn't ever get total forgiveness for, or you didn't know how to, because, by the way, most people don't realize you can't. When you start feeling the forgiveness is there, you didn't do it, God did. This is a little take from Obama. When you feel all the things that you've felt like justified and still maintaining harshness in your heart, right from back from when you were a kid and something happened, to something that went on in your life, to even a generational curse that went on generations ago, when that's gone, because you gave it to God, and then you start giving the good things over to God, and all of a sudden you feel this joy come into your heart, that's God. And when he opens up your heart and he starts telling you to do certain things, that's because he's now communicating with you, because he opened up that channel called salvation, which means you don't have sin anymore. It's gone. And you have to forgive yourself, because if God has, and that means all the nastiness in your heart, all the reasons why you feel so justified in doing all the nasty things, that's why when you start praying for people like Obama, like Hillary Clinton, like all the guys that do bad things, the bankers like George Soros, God heaps first hot coals in their head, because they get grace and then they get judgment, and God gets closure. He brings closure to things. So I think that, I call Independence Day the day of repentance day. If we don't repent as a nation, America is done. And we listen to fools like Obama that want to partition the state because of the Palestinians are so hard done by. Yeah, it's an open-air prison. We shouldn't allow the Israelis to get away with that, but on the other hand, we shouldn't allow Hezbollah and these maniacs to have all these weapons that can threaten Israel and our military bases. We also shouldn't allow Islam to come into this country thinking it's a safe religion. It's not. People need to start getting a reality check here and understanding a lot of Christians are too damn quiet and gutless to actually tell the truth. God wants Joshua Christians that are willing to open their mouths, even if it means the end of your job and your life. He wants people that are willing to stand up and tell the truth. And the problem is, when these little poor, desperate women are coming with their babies, we're not talking about turning them away, but we're talking about how can we make it safe for them to not only be here, but to make their country safe so they can return home by cleaning out the rat's nest of all the co-criminals that are bringing drugs into America, because we will launder their money. It's legal. They say it's not legal. It is. Actually, at the highest levels, it's legal to launder drug money, because we have all these banking rules that allow them to do it. And
that's right.
So when we see the connections of all these things, I say, well, why are they doing this? Why, when we get 5,000 illegals arriving here, now it's 290,000 in the first 6 months of the year. You know damn well Obama and his fools are up to something. He didn't get his immigration bill because he wanted to make a giant underclass of people that weren't integrated Americans. And I don't care what somebody's skin color or what country they came from, or if they're a native from Guatemala. I just care that they learn the English language, they learn about the history of America, they become an American, we clean them up so they're disease-free, and they want to work. That's all the requirements. They can go to school, whatever, and I personally think if someone's smart enough, I don't care what country, they shouldn't be saddled with a giant debt. And there shouldn't be anybody have to buy insurance. America is a place where you have a right to health care. And I'm talking about integrated health care, not some damn doctor, toxic doctor that's going to shove drugs in you because they're following a federal protocol or a state protocol, or their colleagues tell them that's the way to practice. They need to put you first, which would be the ancient priesthood. We don't have that where they serve God first. We've got a bunch of pinhead doctors, toxic docs. We got a pinhead politicians. They're always like prostitutes trying to sell out the next group. And we got a lot of them not even doing their job because they're afraid, well, we better make Obama look really bad so we win the next election. He needs to be impeached. Where the hell are Republicans?
Right.
I just can't get over it when I see every one of these problems is solvable if we put God first, people next, including, number one, the only thing that God made sacred was the family. We got this little family now where the man has probably been killed because he's native in Guatemala. We've got horrendous situations where they're leaving people's heads off bridges. If you just go to parts of northern Mexico where we let these drug cartels get away with murder. And we have, this all happened, by the way, since America got this special treaties with the Mexican government that would side with some Mexican gangs and not others. Most people don't realize that our so-called criminal head of the Attorney General's office actually made a deal fast and furious to make sure that illegal guns got through to our drug gangs because we were making alliances with to make sure their drugs got across the border to America. That's what Fast and Furious is all about. And when you hear anything other than that, let me tell you, I got all kinds of contact. I work with guys working across the border. I work with Delta Force and Special Forces. I know what's going on. And it's pretty damn evil and ugly. And our government is always like, the devil's minion, right the nidus of the center of this freaking mess. Always. And that's why you see Putin, he's afraid to move forward even after the people of Slavyansk and these other places are running, trying to escape from the shelling, about to see the collapse of Eastern Europe. Putin's going to be yanked into this. But now there's an alliance between our guy that we put in, the head of the so-called Iraqi government, who happens to be Shiite, with the Iranians and Russians. We're seeing the players of World War III lined up here, and the bankers are just smacking like a they're smacking like a real hungry, ravenous wolf. They're smacking, thinking, oh boy, World War III is coming, economic collapse, blood and guts, devastation, and more debt than you could ever have the whole world swallow, because the derivatives market has totally crashed, that there's nothing that can pay off all this debt other than a world war and devastations and billions dead. And our God is God. He's going to put his hand up and say, no, you're not going to destroy my people. If they repent, if America repents, if America annexes Israel, which is what I think we should do next, we should clean out the rat's nest of all the Muslim countries with all their weapon systems. We should restrain the Israelis. We should make a deal with Russia that treats them with respect, out of position of strength. We should make certain that we have true alliances with people, and we should have total transparency with countries that do industrial espionage to the Chinese. If they want to do industrial espionage, cut them off. No deals with you guys. You can make all the toys you want, stick it in your warehouses. We're not going to let you sell it here. That'll solve the problem overnight.
Doctor, I just got a note here from one of my associates. It's a list of Muslims, are part of the White House staff, and here's their names and their titles. Arif Ali Khan, Assistant Secretary for Policy Development for the United States Department of Homeland Security. Next person, Mohammed Ali Bieri, Homeland Security Advisor. Next one, Rashad Hussain, Special Envoy to the Organization of Islamic Conference. Next person, Salim Al-Mariata, Obama Advisor and founder of the Muslim Public Affairs Council and its current executive director. Next we go to Imam Mohammed Majid, Obama's Sharia czar from the Islamic Society of North America. Then Ibu Patel, Advisory Council on Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships. How about that?
My. As I say, we are not in Oz anymore, are we? Yeah, watch the Blood Moons movie by this movie called The Tetrad of the Blood Moons. And I can tell you, very impressed. And
what's the title of the film?
Yeah, they're talking about the Blood Moons,
What's the title of the film, Doctor?
Yeah, it talks about the Blood Moons is just the title of the film, right?
The title of the film is Blood Moons?
Yeah, the 4 blood moons. It talks about those.
The 4 blood moons. Okay, the 4 blood moons. Okay, I'll make a note of that.
Right. And that's a very good one. And it talks about a Messianic pastor up in Washington State we've had on the program. I'm going to get him back on the program. And the amazing statement he makes is in the Bible, and this is really clear, is that the signs in the heavens, which are the sun and the moon, are signs that God's calendar is telling things are going to happen.
Right.
And God doesn't, God says, He does not tell you the day or the hour. In fact, Jesus himself, Yeshua, as a man, says, I don't know the day or the hour, but God does, because God is beyond time and space. So what he's really saying is the man Jesus, not the God Jesus, which is his soul or spirit, is basically saying to God, tomorrow is now. Eternity is now. Past, present, and future. Right. And what we need to realize is that we don't need to be nervous. We need to realize that these fools that are doing these games to us, but a lot of people just don't want to accept it. They don't want to realize that God expects us to speak to our fellows, to pray for our overlords to do these things to us so God can bring closure, to talk to our neighbors and our friends, even if it causes a little social, friction, to start sequestering away some skill sets, learning to shoot, like you say, with your left hand and your right hand. So, beyond the spiritual protection, which I tell people, get in small groups, whether you got a big mega church or just a home church. Get ready for the following. I'm not setting dates, but I'm telling you that we're heading toward a Shemitah year, and we know that the judgment's going to start on a Sukkot, because the last day of the 7 years is going to be Yom Teruah, which is the last day called the Feast of the Blowing or the Feast of Trumpets. I got that years ago, in 1988. Supernaturally, God gave me that, and I put that in clay and iron. Traveled around the country to 42 cities in Israel in 1999 with Stan Johnson and his group. And I can tell you that it's held up to today. God's showed me those things, and I find more proof every day that what I've received then is true. It fits in with the blood moons exactly. It fits in the fact that it's 2 Passovers and 2 Feasts of Tabernacles. And because people won't tabernacle with Jesus in their heart, number one, and America's tabernacling with the help of this Hananiah prophet, false prophet, President Obama and his coterie of Muslim lovers of Satan, because that's what it is. Islam is a satanic religion. Not just some of it. All of it. There's no such thing as a moderate Muslim, because if they're moderate Muslims, they'd speak out against the extreme Muslims. They're wrecking their religion. The problem is, it's already wrecked.
Right.
The fact is, let's just face it. If you had a version of Satanism, with Anton LaVey, you'd have to say there's not a new version of LaVey religion that's kind of okay in Hollywood. It's all bad.
Exactly.
And people don't want to accept that. They want to say, no, we got to be nice. No, we don't have to be nice. We have to be honest. The problem is whether it's a disease and someone's got a giant abscess in their chest and you have to drain it, or they got a tumor that's metastasized, or they're getting cataracts that are making them blind, or they've got a brain tumor or a meningioma that's expanding rapidly, so you got to do surgery. You have to face reality, or bad things happen. So let's talk about prepping, John, in this last half hour now.
Okay.
Always about
we touched on it briefly at the beginning of the show, but all my students, once I get past the basic firearms training, I get into more intense training, and that includes the ambidextrous use of rifles, shotguns, and pistols for the following reasons. You may have to shoot around a left-hand corner of a building or a tree when you're right-handed. You don't want to expose most of your body attempting to shoot right-handed around a left-handed corner.
Right.
That would not be wise for a number of reasons.
Right.
So if you shoot around a left-hand corner and you're already practiced and skilled at using a rifle, pistol, or shotgun while shooting left-handed, while you normally shoot right-handed, you have a much better chance of hitting what you're aiming at. In addition, you touched on it briefly, Doctor, a person's dominant eye could become injured or out of use for whatever reason. Your dominant hand could become injured or out of use for whatever reason. So it's good to have a backup in the form of your weak eye and your weak hand, so that you can shoot around the opposite corner of your strong hand and strong eye, and you can also make use of those when you have no choice. And in addition to just shooting, we practice loading and unloading the firearm, manipulating all the controls, which would be the safety mechanism, putting in magazines, taking out magazines, loading magazines, unloading magazines, all the things that you have to do to manipulate and use a rifle, shotgun, or pistol, so that a person is very comfortable and very proficient. Now, even an experienced shooter who hasn't tried this can start out, and I suggest it's like starting to shoot all over again. Start out with a pellet rifle or a pellet pistol, so you can eliminate the recoil and the report of the firearm, and just deal with sight picture, breath control, trigger control, proper holding of the firearm while you're shooting a pellet rifle or a pellet pistol and developing those basic skills. Move on from there to 22 caliber rifles and pistols. And once you're confident with the 22 caliber, then move up to the major calibers, 9mm, 38, 45, 308, 223, and so forth. And it's like starting all over. You may be a shooter with 20, 30 plus years experience, but if you've never shot with your weak eye or your weak hand, it is almost like starting over again. So it's good to start out easy and work up the basic skills, just like I have a novice. I had a 17-year-old student, a female student yesterday, who'd never fired a real firearm before in her life. But however, her grandfather had spent some time with her, teaching her to shoot a pellet pistol. And I was very proud of this girl. We're shooting at a full-size silhouette from 7 yards, 21 feet. And she's shooting very nice groups in the 9-ring, 10-ring, and X-ring, a very nice, tight group about the size of an 8-inch pie plate, which I've had many experienced shooters with 20-plus years experience who can't do that. So I was very happy with her progress there. So that's a prepper tip of the day, ladies and gentlemen, is to, in addition to your normal firearms practice, incorporate ambidextrous practice in all areas of shooting rifles, shotguns, and pistols.
Yeah, can we go over some of the basic things again? Firstly, shelter. I think we're in agreement that the best shelter is probably the Turtle Tough shelter. If people get RVs, they're really getting in trouble. The best RV, if you're looking for something that looks fancy, it's the Earth Roamer that they redesigned and rebuilt in Colorado. But, you know, these things are targets, because if you have something fancy like that, you're going to get it stolen. If there's chaos, you can't get it off the roads very easily. And if you do get off the roads, you have to off-road ability. You have to have gasoline, or if you do diesel fuel, you need to chew up fuel like crazy. Unless you got something fancy, like you have some way of generating hydrogen, you get a hydrogen fuel engine, you're really sunk.
Right.
And so I tell people that's one of the first problems. The other is the big problem I see of mom and pop thinking they're going to go out in the middle of nowhere because they got enough money and resources to do it. It takes a community. And I tell people to start off with home churches. If you get 20, 30 families and you've got overlapping skill sets, they need to get the land together and do a conjoint plan where they own it together, where they start making sure there's a well on the property so they can get water. There's a place where they can grow food, even if it's in their greenhouses or a type of turtle tough shelter, because we have to assume all hell is going to break loose, including a nuclear war somewhere. So you've got to assume that the rain is radioactive. So if you don't filter your water, any plants you grow in the open, even if you've got a giant farm, could be radioactive. So you got to be ready for almost any eventuality, or you're going to really be shocked by how simple
you do.
things.
You have to have lots of plan B, plan C, plan D.
Yeah, even just digging your latrine far enough away from your home, you don't have, stuff going back into your water supply and other things. It's like chemical toilets, the kind of things that are simple now, not so simple when things are crazy. Back in a moment. We'll come back, actually. We're on the break. I did a search, and it's amazing how fast you can find things. I went to the site, bigbugoattrucks.com. Wow. You got these, 5-ton, now totally zapped out, bug out trucks, and it's got, everything in them. It's like these things are built, they're built like a tank already. But then what they've done is they've added all these kind of upgrades. They're kind of bulletproof and LED lights, blackout lights. It's got everything, refrigerator. They got a Cummins diesel, 13,000 miles, 52-inch tall tires, 21,500. This basically can drive right over the top of cars. I mean, if you have the money, you can do that kind of stuff. The problem is you're going to run out of fuel, unless you have some way of generating fuel like biodiesel, which, by the way, you can do if you get this as a diesel truck. All you need basically is oil. Even spent oil. You can get a large containers. You can do it if you want to make your own biodiesel. The problem is, you see, people often get into very fancy things and they forget something simple like how to deal with a broken bone that's puncturing through the skin, or how to deal with a serious infection, or how to do perimeter control. And they don't realize you can do something as simple as having cans that will shake. They'll tell you to watch, or even a sound-activated system that'll allow you to turn on your cameras if you have. So you have to have layers of protection if you really think that thing happens.
That's right. So, well, Doctor, once you get into preps, you find out very easily that spending into heavy six digits is easily obtainable, but it's really not necessary, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I think the most important thing is overlocking skill sets of dozens of families that go and prep together. The home church that preps together survives together, because if things go longer than 2 months, let's say with ATMs down or power out, or the regular financial system has gone kaput because the government's kind of basically dysfunctional, or there's a natural disaster, it's just going to be up to the people helping each other. It's not going to be up to government. They're going to do nothing. And it's not up to high-tech stuff. It's going to devolve to real well-developed low-tech stuff and skill sets to protect yourself and grow food and filter water and do simple things. It's not going to be fancy things, is it?
No. Cast iron cookware will take on a whole new significance.
Yeah, I know. I've been collecting it for a while. And of course, when you start doing your prepper stuff and collect a little bit here, a little bit there, and start getting things like recently even getting a new barbecue. I have a gas barbecue, but also just we got from our son one of these old charcoal barbecues. You can stockpile a lot of charcoal. If you need to cook food and everything runs out, including gas, you got charcoal. Or you can make your own charcoal. So that's a simple thing.
The majority of people listening to you and I talk here on this Monday, first Monday in July, they're more likely to be going to flea markets looking for used cast iron cookware than they are looking at $500,000 bug-out vehicles.
Exactly. And by the way, if you get a tripod and you're able to cook food, snares, you mentioned, who's the guy that you mentioned usually you like to get for getting snares?
Oh, Buckshot Hemming, yeah.
Buckshot Hemming, and it's quite funny. You go to his website. He's a bit of a comedian, too, and an author.
And he's become quite the author. His first book was a little rough around the edges, but he's really become quite the author.
Now, a lot of people say, well, that can't happen. I said, well, the first way to find out is to go talk to your firefighters and find out the latest disasters that happen in your area, part of the country. Talk to the county sheriff and find out if they have a prepper weekend once a month or whatever, where they actually prep and you learn, the regular training, which they'll make sure your community is volunteer to try to help out if there's a natural disaster, and then take the that core course that they do for the training. What's it called? CRT. I'm trying to think of the name of the course that they recommend from the local sheriff's office.
Right.
And then take your basic life support, basic trauma support. And when you take those basic courses, you're going to realize, whoa, these are simple things I can do. And if you don't have those skills, even if you've been a doctor or nurse in the past and you haven't kind of brushed up on it, you'll realize there's a few new little tricks. There's always something new you can learn.
That's right.
You'll also be able to teach other things that they may not know themselves because you've had experience. Especially if you've been like an Army medic and you've actually been in the battlefield, or you've been working like I have in the emergency or the trauma room. You'll be able to show them little tricks that you've learned. But you'll always learn. And that's why I tell people, even going back to the kind of the basics, it's amazing how many times you'll learn things or a new way of doing something that's better.
Right.
Better way of getting heart compressions, for example. Better way of closing off a wound. Like for example, those wound glues that they use now, or the hemostatic dressings will stop bleeding. You get these special hemostatic dressings, just slap it on, boom, stops bleeding like crazy. And you can have those stockpiled so they'll be good for years. So you can stop bleeding, and those are a good thing to have. People say, well, I won't need to use those because they're just called the EMT. I said, what if everything's just such a disaster, nobody can get the EMT or the firefighters? They're just running from one disaster to another, and you're low on the priority list. And people say, well, that can't happen. I said, well, you hope it can't happen, but the nature, like I'm sure they didn't know that when Katrina hit. Well, we're moving into the extreme storm season on the East Coast, and I heard it's going to be very active hurricane season. Have you heard that too?
Well, I'm getting different reports, and we've had a bunch of very mild hurricane seasons in a row here, about 5 of them. So maybe we're due for one. Yeah,
what I've heard is that they think this is going to be more active in the last few years. I don't know how big, but these storms are also anomalous because they act in funny ways, and obviously they're being steered if it's geopolitically active, because I don't think there's such a thing as normal weather anymore, just like there's no jet stream crossing the southern United States. They said last week that we have to have a monsoon come out from Mexico and Central and South America before we even get a weather system telling us whether the wind patterns are going to move from west to east. That's weird. I mean, that violates everything I've learned about weather. I'm thinking, what kind of world do we live in now? We live in a world where some people in some supercomputers with space-based laser weapons and plasmapherometry are playing with the planet like it's a board game. That's not very funny.
No, not at all.
And I think people think, well, no, they can't do that. I say, we're living in a sci-fi, not thriller, but a scary movie, that we have some people at the top that really, they're not Christians, they're not reasonable people, They really think they're going to do genetic and cybernetic enhancement and live for millennia. And really, we're a bit of an irritant if we get to know what the truth is, because we scare the heck out of them by just deciding to not only know what's going on, but do something about it, which is, number one, survive. Number two, tell our neighbor. And a lot of the survival is pretty straightforward. You know, take the right nutraceuticals, get off the drugs, get yourself in fit shape.
Right.
It's a simple tech, talking to each other in your home cell group, in your church, you know, starting to prep. And I tell people everybody's got to prep every day, even if it's just learning how to deal with doing CPR and closing off a wound and taking an object out of somebody's eye so they don't have a chunk of steel from a grinder sitting in their cornea and forming a rust ring, or taking out a foreign body out of somebody's leg because they got it stuck in them without getting infected, and proper footwear, all those kind of things. We talked about that before.
We have.
So, John, any hints on what you're going to talk about next Monday on the next show?
Well, that remains to be seen, because it's a fast-changing world, and I want to be on top of the best thing.
I know, it's always a surprise. Now, this Friday you'll be back on. Hopefully, we'll have some geopolitical updates. I'm pretty certain that Mr. Putin in the next week is going to operate. I don't think that his half-life as a Russian leader will not be very long unless he actually stomps on these people in Kiev. And once the Russians actually start making a move, you're going to see the Europeans wilt, and the usurper-in-chief of the White House, he's not going to take any substantial military action to stop the Russians. And if he does, he's going to see our Navy go to the bottom of the Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf, because we cannot stop the Russians from whatever they want to do.
No, and we need, even though Putin is powerful and personally wealthy, he does answer to people himself also.
Well, yeah, Putin, you see, remember, is a player, because ultimately the reason why he's not moving is because he wants to maintain his position. He also wants to maintain the Russian, the respect of the Russian power structure that's going on there. But there's a limit.
Absolutely, there is.
Thank
you, Doctor. This is Liberty Man signing off.
Thank you, John. Amazing help. Again, that idea of training with both sides, we'll be over some prepper ideas. Talk to your local sheriff. If you don't believe that you have problems in your area or potential problems that could happen, talk to your sheriff, talk to your other prepper people in your church. Once you connect with the people that are actually doing things, or actually dealing with daily disasters, you start to realize bad stuff does happen to good people. But good people that are prepared survive the bad stuff.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks a lot, John. We'll see you again on Friday. And coming up tomorrow, Dr. Bob Thiel, hour number 1. Hour 3, a major geopolitical analysis with Tim Alexander. A special guest coming up on Thursday with Mike Connolly from U.S. Justice Foundation and me. And a special guest on Wednesday, hour 3.